Hi and welcome back to my channel. I'm Simon and today I'm back with my best books of the year so far video, which is one of my favourite videos to make and one of my favourite videos to watch on YouTube. I should caveat that with the fact that this is my best books of the year so far up to the end of June. I know we're a little bit of a way into July, but I haven't included any of the books I've read this month so far, even though there are a couple of contenders for books of the year, but we'll see how things go when I next do this, probably at the beginning of next year. Before I head to the novels that have made my best books of the year so far list, I have a couple of honourable mentions. Firstly, my favourite non-fiction of the year so far. Now I am planning on, at the end of November, doing a favourite non-fiction books of 2025. I know that won't quite be the end of the year, but anyway, that's what I'm planning on doing. But my favourite non-fiction so far, and my first honourable mention, is Neneh Cherry's 1,000 Threads, which is just the most wonderful memoir, both of Neneh Cherry's life and how she came to be a singer and what happened after that. But also, this book looks at so much else. So one, it looks at cultural history, it looks at race, it sadly looks at racism, it looks at family and found family and friendship and love in all its forms, it looks at addiction and grief. It's a whole kaleidoscopic spectrum of humanity in one book that is so beautifully written. I just think this is absolutely phenomenal, so I wanted to mention that. Then we have a book that is, I guess, a collection of fictions. Not really, I don't think, a short story collection, because it contains 5, some people are saying long short stories, some people are saying novellas. So yeah, I've just gone with a collection of fictions, and that is Stag Dance by Tori Peters. Now, I loved every single fiction. I nearly said short story, I nearly said novella. And I loved the fact that each one was based around a different genre, be it horror, be it dystopic, be it speculative, be it Western, which is the title tale, and I think it's probably my favourite of them all. But that said, I thought every single one was brilliant, and I love how gender is both completely unimportant in this book, but also so important in this book. And I think the way that Tori plays with that is absolute genius, so another recommend. And then a novel that isn't included amongst the other novels that I'm about to talk about, because I've always said that I can't have a book in a series in my favourite books of the year so far. Like I say that I can't have more than one novel by the same author or one book by the same author. And this can be seen as a culmination of this author's work, or a diving off point to go back and read all of her backlist. It's Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout, who I've become a huge fan of. And this combines some of her main characters, Lucy Barton, Bob Burgess and Olive Kitteridge, and it's how Lucy and Bob become friends. Bob thinks that Lucy should befriend Olive, what happens there, but also there's this murder mystery going on in the background. I thought this was stunning. Her writing is so incredible, but because I have those silly little rules that only I have imposed on myself, I can't count it. I might change my mind by the end of the year, we'll see. But yes, so those are my 3 honourable mentions. And speaking of honourable things or honorary things, before we head on to my books of the year so far, I thought I would just mention that very excitingly, last Wednesday, I was inducted to the Royal Society of Literature as an honorary fellow, which is a career highlight. It was a complete surprise. You don't know that you've been nominated? So you don't know that you've been nominated, and well, the scream I let out when I got the email was probably heard by all the neighbours. In fact, I'm surprised the police weren't called. But yeah, it's just such a delight. It is for the support and advancement of literature in the UK. And as someone who barely scraped their GCSEs, to get something like this is just like madness, but I am utterly thrilled. I'll be talking about it more, and indeed there is footage of it coming in one of my weekly vlogs over on Patreon. I am vlogging throughout the summer. My Patreon is always linked down below. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that because it's a lovely life update and something that I am unusually proud of. Right, let's get cracking with the 15-ish books that are my best books of the year so far. I'm going to try very hard to do this as quickly as I can, because I did do an epic reading wrap up of February, March, April, May and June very recently, which I will also link down below if you want to go and watch it.
However, there are quite a few books from January here, because January was a bang month too, but I'll try to remember to leave my reading wrap-up for that month as well. Reading wrap-ups will be back monthly from the end of this month.
So, at number 15, because I have done them in a rough order, my top 5 are definitely my top 5. The others could shift about a little bit more and have done throughout the year so far. But today, number 15 is Tall Bones by Anna Bailey, which has reminded me how much I love a slow burn mystery where you get to know lots of different characters and find out what's going on behind all of the curtains, those twitching curtains, and you get to be a twitcher with them. This is all about a young woman called Abby who goes missing, and we follow her group of friends as they try and work out, well, particularly one friend, as they try and work out what happened and sort of do a bit of investigating on their own. It's incredibly dark. It's very queer in parts, and yeah, I just thought this was an absolutely corking read. Cannot wait to read Anna Bailey's second novel. Number 14 is another author that I cannot wait to read their second novel. I'm planning doing that later this year along with, well, not at the same time, but with Tall Bones too. Anyway, what's the book? It is Bellis by Nicola Dinnan, which is about Tom and Ming who meet at university and fall in love, and Ming tells Tom that they want to transition, and we follow Ming and the lead up to that transition and thinking around the decision to transition, and then what happens afterwards to them as a couple. And it's one of those books that's brilliant because not only do we get to know Tom and Ming and find out the intricacies of this situation, we also get to know their friends and get to know their characters and their different motivations and how they interact with this couple, and through their eyes get to see this relationship in different ways and get to see the two main characters in different ways, which is something that I really love, that I think Coco Mellors does particularly well, and this reminded me of that. I loved also food writing. I loved the way this looks at the way Malaysian culture comes together with British culture and where it clashes and all those things, but also how being trans is perceived in both those cultures. So we have that. I thought it was brilliant. At 13, we have The Artist by Lucy Steeves, which I believe is now out in America as The Artist and the Feast, I think. This is set in 1920s in Provence, and we follow Joseph as he heads to the house of Eduardo Tartuffe, who is a renowned but very reclusive artist, and he thinks he's been invited there. Turns out it wasn't Eduardo who invited him, but his niece Etty, and we follow as he stays as kind of this model, and the way the art is described is phenomenal. I don't normally like arty books. I love this, but also it has this real brooding gothic atmosphere that builds and builds and builds, and we know from the beginning something quite dreadful is probably happened, and yeah, so we follow along for the ride. That to me is a real sign of how great Lucy Steeves' writing is, because to do that is really, really deft, and I think she does it brilliantly. Then joint number 12, because I can't decide out of these two which one I love more, and so I wanted to keep them both in, but I'll start with Dream Hotel by Layla Lamy, which reminded me how much I love speculative fiction, and indeed love the speculative fiction within Stag Dance that I mentioned earlier by Tori Peters. This is all about Sarah, who is coming back to, I think it's America, and when she goes through customs, you have to get checked by AI, and AI can work out whether it thinks you're going to cause a crime or commit a crime of some sort, and it sets off with Sarah, and we follow her as she ends up in the Dream Hotel, which is not a hotel at all, but we meet a lot of women who are also going through the same thing. What I loved about this was how it flits between her relationship outside and what's going on there, and you start to mistrust everyone. I won't say any more than that, but Hum by Helen Phillips ties with it, as I think this is another great speculative novel, and I really couldn't rank them separately. I guess I'm extra thrilled with this one because it reminded me how much I love speculative fiction, and then sent me to reading this not long after. But this is set in the not too distant future where AI is in control of pretty much everything, and we meet Hums, who are AI robots / beings who they try to help you and then sell you stuff, and we meet May, who has lost her job and undergoes a procedure to change her face, which means that Hums can't read it, and with the money she takes her family off to this incredible, well, it's the Botanic Gardens, but that's become kind of this theme parky hotel, I guess. And what I think is incredible about this book is, one, the sense of brooding tension continually, but also the way this looks at this world and what AI could mean for us and how isolated it can make us within a family, but also how it looks at small family issues within that world. And I thought that was done brilliantly. I was hooked by this. Then at number 11 we have Long Bright River by Liz Moore, and oh my goodness, I'm quite annoyed with myself that I haven't read this sooner, but also delighted that I have finally read it. I bought this back in 2020 in the Strand in New York, and this is set in Philadelphia, looking at the opioid crisis, where we meet Mickey, who is a police officer who is looking after the streets, and there's been a lot of dead young women found. It seems like they have died of drug overdoses. However, Mickey's getting suspicious that something else is going on, but she's also all the more invested in what's going on with these women for reasons that I could say, because it isn't really a spoiler, but I'm not going to because I want this to be a short video. But I love this. It's another slow burner, but this does something that I really think thrillers can do amazingly, which is to look at what's going on in society now. And I would say that Anna Bailey does that brilliantly too. This is just a bit more of a chunk, so you get more of a character study because it's also less characters, but it shows you how people under pressure, what that can lead to, but also looks at this issue with opioids in America. Absolutely brill. At number 10, we have Smallboat by Vincent Delacroix, translated by Helen Stevenson. And this was the book that I wanted, well, no, that's not true. It was the book that I jointly wanted to win, possibly with the next book, the International Booker. This is inspired by a true situation where a boat with migrants was between France and the UK, pretty much in the middle of the channel. It got into trouble. They found the French lifeguard, who pretty much did nothing other than say phone the English, and then just left it. And we get inside the head of this lifeguard who made that decision, and this book is shocking in the way it looks at that. It's incredibly uncomfortable, so powerful, so poignant, so important, because it also holds a mirror to the reader saying, what are you really doing about this situation? You're shocked and you're upset and you're horrified, but what are you doing, and how are we dealing with the root of the problem? And I think that's an incredible thing to do. So yeah, a very uncomfortable book, but I think incredibly, and I hate using this term, but incredibly important. Then at number 9, the book that I jointly wanted to win, although I don't believe in joint prize winners, but as I mentioned, Smallboat was a really powerful, poignant, unsettling, incredibly political book. This book, which is On the Calculation of Volume 1 by Solvi Ball, was the book that I enjoyed the most. I should say it's translated by Barbara J. Haviland from Danish, and which should be on the cover, very naughty. This is about Tara, who is living November the 18th for the 100 and somethingth time, and we go back to when she relives that day again the first time, head up to this point, and then go forward as she's hoping that something is going to happen with this time loop that she's found herself stuck in. And I just love this. I love the way it looks at aging. I love the way it looks at how love can change. I love the way it looks at how we sort of want to relive days and parts of our lives, but then actually in reality, do we? I have read volume 2, and volume 3 has not long recently arrived. In fact, it was yesterday. So yeah, I'll be reading that very soon. But I have absolutely loved this series so far, and yeah, I think this is great. Excited that there's going to be 7 of them, frankly, because I'm enjoying them that much. At number 8, we have A Little Trickery by Rosanna Pike, and partly this is one of my favourite books of the year because I love Tib, our narrator, so much, who, I should say, it's set in rural Tudor Britain, and it starts with Tib and her mother being on the run. However, Tib becomes an orphan and so has to fend for herself, and we follow her as she does so, and gets embroiled with various different characters along the way, and one storyline, without any spoilers, looks at something that I hadn't looked at in Tudor England, I don't think, before. But also I haven't read that many books about rural Tudor England, but for me it was all of that plus Tibbs' incredible narration that just made this like, and well, I was going to say an almost perfect book. It kind of is, but it's definitely one of my absolute favourite historical fiction books that I have read, even though there's another one in the top 5. Oh, spoiler, well, teaser, spoiler, whichever it is. I thought this was incredible. And I should say, one of the joys of this year's Women's Prize for Fiction longlist was that it brought The Dream Hotel and A Little Trickery into my life, as well as The Artist and various books that didn't make it onto the shortlist. So yeah, number 7, we have Blackwoods Blue Sky by A.O. and Ivy, a book that I can't tell you too much about because I don't want to spoil it for anyone. It's set in Alaska, and we meet Birdie, who is a young single mum who is, well, getting by as much as she can, and she meets Arthur, who's a bit of an outsider from the town for reasons that you discover, and it's how we follow their relationship and all that unfolds from there. It's a retelling of a fairy tale, one of my faves, but I'm not going to tell you what that is because I think that would possibly give too much away. But I loved this. It was gritty, it was sexy, it was full of incredible nature writing, brilliant romance, and a book that made me incredibly emotional. There are things that happen that genuinely shocked me, and yeah, I was quite a mess by the end of it, so there we are. Then at number 6 we have The Book of Guilt by Catherine Chidgey, which is set in an alternate 1970s Britain, where we meet Vincent, Lawrence and William, who are triplets. They are living in an old crumbly grand estate with mother morning, mother afternoon and mother night. So we know there's something a little bit odd going on there. We also meet the Minister of Loneliness, who is in government at the time. Again, something that doesn't exist, so what's that all about? And we meet Nancy, who is a young girl living in the suburbs of a small town. And as we get to know her and her family, things are just a little bit unsettling. What the heck is going on? Well, it's a wild ride to find out, and I absolutely loved it. I had so much fun reading this book. I say that though, I did cry at one point really, really, really badly. I loved the way that whenever I thought I knew what was going on, Catherine Chidgey would shift things slightly without me feeling like I'd been played in a bad way. It was like a fun way, and everything would change again. And I thought that was so brilliantly done. Yeah, really, really, really loved this. At number 5, we have After You'd Gone by Maggie O'Farrell, her debut novel that came out 25 years ago this very year. And I'd never got around to reading it, and that anniversary reminded me that I hadn't, and so I decided to give it a whirl. And oh my goodness, this is just phenomenal. This is about Alice, who one day she decides that she's going to go and see her family in Edinburgh. So she gets the train from London to Edinburgh, sees her sister at the station, goes to the lavatory and sees something so shocking in the mirror that she heads straight back on a train down to London, and is so befuddled, is that the right term? But is so kind of lost in the thoughts around this that she walks into traffic and ends in a coma. And while she's in the coma, we get these flashbacks to her life leading up to this point, including a particular romance, but also through her visitors we get to see different parts of her life and also their lives and how that all interlinks. And I thought this was stunning. Her writing is just incredible, and there were so many, well, sentences, paragraphs that if I was an underliner, I would have underlined. Like, this book would just be full of them. It's just, yeah, incredible, and loved it. Right, at number 4.
I should have said, this, like, part of it is definitely in number order. Anything before, maybe, oh no, maybe my top 10 wouldn't change. I don't know, but it could also around, but certainly this top 5 could.
At number 4, we have Harriet Tubman live in concert by Bob the Drag Queen, and this book instantly makes me smile when I think about it. It also was quite an emotional wallop of a book in a lot of ways. This is set in the sort of roughly now or not too distant future, where basically people who've died from history are suddenly just returning. It's called The Return. And one of those people is Harriet Tubman, along with some of the people that she saved with the Underground Railroad. And she's decided that she wants to make an album. And so a producer called Darnell is brought in to help with that. And he is a queer black man living in contemporary America with all that that brings with it. And it's how history from the past looks at what's going on now, or how Harriet looks both at the past, what she went through, but also kind of then how the world is now. And I just thought it was so fantastically done. I loved all of the characters, as complex and curmudgeonly as some of them were, as flawed and fantastic as others were. And yeah, I just thought this was an absolute joy, so I cannot recommend this enough. Number 3 is Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. Now, I have been meaning to read this for years and years and years, and had the joy of interviewing Sarah earlier this year and finally getting around to reading it. This is a book that many of you will have read, but I still don't want to mention the spoiler, and please don't in the comments down below, because if you haven't read it, it is so twisty and brilliant that this was a proper jaw-dropper shocker for me. I love this book for so many reasons. One, Sarah Waters is just an incredible storyteller. 2, the gothic Victorianness of this was just delicious. And 3, this is the perfect example of a big chunky book that you want to get lost in, you sort of want to devour, but also you never want to end. It is just utterly, utterly wonderful. I'm thrilled that I still have another Sarah Waters to go, because this has reminded me how much I love her writing. Yeah, just an absolutely incredible book. And please, 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 like I said, don't spoil anything in the comments below, because I've been meaning to read this over several Christmases over the last few years, and every time somebody has given one of the spoilers away, one of the earlier ones, and yeah, it's put me off. And now onto the top 2 books of the year so far for me, or top 2 novels, I guess, of the year so far for me. First of all, or secondly, we have The Room Above a Shop by Anthony Shapland. And this book is quite the emotional wallop in both extremes, I guess, in the fact that this is a beautiful, powerful, sexy love story, but also an absolutely devastating tale too. It's set in the era of Section 28 with the HIV crisis, and we are in rural South Wales, where we meet M and B, who are both closeted queer men, but who, well, spot something in each other and start a secret relationship, initially out in the wild Welsh wilderness. We follow their secret relationship, and it is just beautifully done. It's so, well, not a word is wasted. This book in some ways reminded me of Caris Davies' writing, where she can write shorter novels that just have this epicness about them, and that's very much how I feel about Anthony Shapland, and cannot wait for whatever he's going to write next. No pressure though, obviously. This book I found hauntingly beautiful, brutally beautiful, and heartbreaking yet hopeful, and really, yeah, I won't forget this book ever. And then at number 1,
which is coming out in the UK and America in August, so do get pre-ordering it, because pre-orders are really, really important. I'm also really hoping to see this on the Booker Prize long list. That would make my year, as would sing this one actually. I'm going to do a Booker Prize predictions reel on Instagram on Tuesday, so if you're not following me on Instagram, head to it, it's down below.
Please do pre-order as you can. It's been out in Australia since the end of last year, and was the first book I read this year. It's Dusk by Robbie Arno, who is officially one of my absolute favourite authors. This is the tale of twins, Floyd and Iris, who are living below the breadline. They're really struggling in a kind of alternate, eerie Tasmania, where a puma is killing shepherds, and a
what's it called? What's the word? Bounty.
And a bounty has been placed on this puma's head. The puma is known as Dusk, hence the title of the book. And the twins decide that they are going to try and capture this puma because it would change their lives forever. And what follows is an intensely atmospheric and quite anxiety inducing adventure as they try to find Dusk and the people that they meet along the way. I just thought this was utterly incredible and has one of the best endings I have ever read in a book, ever. So there we are, my number one book of the year. It's going to take quite something to knock this off. Part of me, having said that, hopes that nothing does, but then part of me also is like, oh, to find other books as good as this, or in fact, any of the books that I've mentioned in this video will be a joy. And actually, as I teased, I have already found a couple of bangers this month. So there we go. I would love to know if you've read any of these and what you made of them. I would also love to know what your top 3, 4, 5 books are in the comments below. As always, it's been an absolute treat to chat to you. Let's keep the conversation going on in the comments down below. I don't know when my next video will be. Probably next Sunday if something doesn't randomly turn up before. But until then, as I mentioned, I will be doing a Booker Prize predictions reel on Instagram, which linked below. I'm actually going to do a video talking about those 13 books on Patreon, along with that vlog about becoming an honorary fellow. I'll link that below. If you would like to subscribe, if you haven't and you've enjoyed this, that would be lovely. If you'd like to like it, I keep forgetting that I should say that sometimes, that would be really, really lovely too. But until the next one, I hope you're reading something delightful. Let's keep chatting in the comments down below, and I will see you in another video very, very soon. Bye.